I was working at the Canadian Tire store on Clyde Avenue, which was the newest and biggest in the area. I actually built the parts department there. And of course, we all heard the rumors, but Tony Graham was starting a little small car dealership. And actually, that's what he called it back then. It was a small car center. But there were more Volkswagens and Alouette snowmobiles, I think, than anything else. But he was getting in this line of cars called a Toyota. And he'd come in to visit me at work, and he'd all kinds of excuses why he'd come in, that little devil. He was so charismatic, though, and I just, any time he'd come in, I'd spend some time with him, and he'd ask me, how would I set up a parts department? What would you put where? How would you do it? I said, well, Tony, why don't I come down and I'll have a look? Just over lunch someday or whatever. Well, I went down and pulled into the Sunoco gas station. And I go through one of the service bays, through these Dutch doors. I'm in a Quonset hut. And I said, okay, and I figure they're going to turn dirt and they're going to build something. So I said, where is the parts department going to be? And he said, well, you're in the middle of it. So I think we had about 2 4x8 sheets of plywood on the floor. That encompassed the floor area. And we spent the next hour or so on our hands and knees with power chalk, drawing out where I thought bins and shelves should go. And we had a great summer and fall. We got getting into the winter was a little bit of a different story. Like I said, I was in a Quonset hut. That means no insulation, just tin all around you. I would come in the morning and be snow on the roof. Well, through the day, the snow would melt and they would form icicles. So when I came in the next morning, I may have a 2-foot-long icicle over my desk. And so I don't know if there was hazard pay back then or not. Started May the 21st, 1971. I was employee number 13. And I don't know what we're up to now. We must be up to 280. I would imagine Dave would be up in probably 50, 60. Originally, now they've jumbled them all since. But anyway, Dave was working for a rival Toyota store out in the East End, Sunoco Toyota.
A good colleague of mine, Greg Hogarth, had been working with Tony for a while. And I guess John Maloney had been looking for someone to do his income tax. It would have been somewhere around 75 or 76. And I did his income tax for about 3 or 4 years.
Well, after a few years, Tony got wind of this. It was tax time. Tony calls me into his office. And he said, what's this I hear about you getting your income tax return done by the accountant at a rival dealership? It's that time of year. I went home at lunch, brought in my tax return. All done up nice and neat. David had everything so square. David wrote back then like a typewriter. He probably still does. And so I said, okay, Tony, your turn. Show me yours. Well, our accountant at the time was a little disheveled in his work. He started bringing in old antifreeze boxes loaded with papers. As he came through the door from the accounting into Tony's office, papers are flying everywhere. Tony just took one look, looked back at me, case closed, that was it. A few months later, we had need of a new car sales manager. Tony calls me. What was that guy's name again out at Sunoco Toyota? Your friend? I said, oh, he's David. I said, shall I call him or would you like to call him?
1979 was a real low point for Toyota in Canada. Their volume, because of a currency crisis, had been cut by 2/3. The dealer I was working for in the East End of Ottawa lost his franchise. I had been speaking with Tony through that summer, having been introduced by John Maloney. Had a couple of meetings and then decided there was something about his uplifting personality that I thought, yeah, I can hitch my wagon here. See how we do. So I started as sales manager on the day after Labor Day, 1979. About 3 weeks after that, we got the much heralded Tercel, and it took off. Sales were amazing, 5 and 6 and 7 a day. There'd be Saturdays when people were almost lined up in the showroom.
We were in the fall of '79. The Toyota Tercel was just coming on board, and it was just selling like gangbusters. We needed more space. We needed land. The space between the Sunoco gas station, which we had as a car lot then, and the new car dealership was owned by a gentleman called Mr. Troop, and it was the City Tavern restaurant. He would not sell to Tony. Tony approached him many, many times. He would not sell to Tony.
The owner of the property, who also owned the tavern, was not a big fan of Tony's. They just didn't get along.
At the time, Shopper City was expanding, and there was rumors of a fast food outlet going in, probably a McDonald's.
So he took some advice from a friend and had someone represent themselves to this gentleman as possibly working for McDonald's.
Well, Mr. Throop was ecstatic at the idea of sticking a fast food franchise in McDonald's, or a perish the thought Kentucky Fried Chicken expand. I still can't eat that stuff.
The transaction got done very quickly. Tony called me from the lawyer's office as he was signing the papers. Myself and three of the salespeople got out. We were parking cars along the front, and the owner of the land, former owner of the land, drove by and almost drove off the road. He was so upset when he saw what had happened.
Tony had the greatest foresight. His foresight was derived from him talking to people. He had his finger on the public's pulse. He knew what was going where, and he figured Ottawa was not going to grow east or west, but he figured it was south. As one day he says to me, come with me, we're going to go buy a safe. I mean, we should really, big company like us, have a safe. So we borrowed the service manager's 1971 Toyota Corolla station wagon, and we drove right up here, down Slack Road to Cohen's, scrap metal. And we got us a scrap metal safe, which they put in the back of my service manager's 71 Corolla with a forklift. And there we are, and Tony's telling me how this place is going to grow and how it's going to expand, and someday there's going to be car dealerships and big box stores. And of course I'm saying, sure, Tony, 44 years ago, sure, this is going to... Anyway, this is what it's become. And that day, Tony and I drove down the Slack Road, me listening to him go on about how it was going to grow.
Tony started assembling land on Maryville Road in a very uninhabited area of Maryville Road. At the time, Hunt Club didn't exist. It was a road called Oil Tank Road, and it was filled with nothing but oil tanks, and it didn't connect over the river. He assembled about 5 different pieces of land that were pretty much all together in what was an area of land that had been owned by Petrofina. We were approached by Costco's representative in Ottawa with a view to doing a land swap. They realized that the land that they owned, which is where our dealership is right now, wasn't going to be big enough for them for the parking that they need. So they came to us and said, we'd like to do a land swap. And we did, and it worked out being very favorable for both parties.
How can I sum up my time with Tony? How much time do we have left? It's been my life. It's been very rewarding, personally. It's been a very satisfying job. You have to enjoy what you're doing. You have to. And with Tony, it was always, boy, we had fun. You know, in the very early days where he would come around and he'd give me my little brown envelope and stick it in my shirt pocket. And hurry, now we have to get down to Talisman for the roast beef buffet, which was probably like about $2.95 back then. Sitting around, you know, the guys would be playing penny poker in the garage on Friday at lunchtime, but like I say, after all those years sitting there with that Kentucky Fried Chicken, I can't even stand the smell of that stuff anymore. But with Tony, like I say, without getting very, very emotional, it's just been, I've had a really good life with Tony.
Tony had a ton of character, and from the way that he interacted with staff, the way that he interacted with his customers, because he was definitely a customer-first guy, and all of the charitable work that both himself and Elizabeth have done over the years. And there's an awful lot that people don't know about because he just did not want the publicity. You can't leave that behind. You know, if in your own mind you also have a career that you're going with, you're not going to do better than that.
I wish everyone could have had the job experience, the life that I have had. 44 years with the same gentleman. Tony's reputation, the dealership's reputation. We were the benchmark in car dealerships. People looked to us.
1991, we were the #1 Toyota dealer in the country, selling over 1,800 new cars and over 700 used.
Tony's retention with people, our employees, customers. He treated customers like employees, employees like customers. the people, now I've been there 44 years, but I can walk in and I can see at any one day another half a dozen people are there well over 30 years.
Well, certainly my hope for the company is that it remains the #1 Toyota franchise in the city, and it continues to expand. Always, keeping Tony's principles in mind, which is customers first, and having very happy staff. And those two, once we put those two together, pretty much success is guaranteed.
It's not always been work. It's just been so enjoyable. I've had so much fun. It's been my life. If anything, I come home at night, my wife will say, "Darn, you got to get a life." She says, "All you ever do is talk about your job." I said, "Well, I'm talking about my life then, aren't I? Because my job is my life, and I've loved it. And I can only see it going on with Maureen and Elizabeth at the helm, carrying on the way Tony would do it, trying to fill his shoes, his gray flannel pants, and his little blazer. But I have all the confidence in the world in them. I've always had fun there."
Great, John. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.